Ladies and gentlemen, we are back here again on the Soul Sessions, and I welcome you back as always. But today we have the Queen of Queens, Visage. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm very well. Just glad for you to grace us with your presence. How you been?
I've been good, Semi-retirement's treating me well. But yeah, I've just got a few more shows this year, so I'm looking forward to them.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm speaking about that retirement because I saw on your Instagram you made that announcement as well. What was the initial decision behind that?
And there was a few things. So at the beginning of the year, I went through a breakup after almost 11 years.
Oh,
And then I injured my meniscus in my knee, and I
mm-hmm.
had a damaged rotator cuff. So there was just a few things that were building up that I'd not really had to face before. And then the meniscus was kind of the big one because my physio and doctor told me that I could either, take a year out and let it heal naturally on its own because it wasn't too bad, or I could carry on wrestling properly full time and risk surgery, which could then obviously take longer for it to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And then that means, I mean, look at Shay Monet or look at anyone that's had like a meniscus tear. Like it's a very long rehab, and then it can re-damage quite quickly and quite easily. So um, it just seemed like the more sensible option, if I'm honest.
No, no, I can fully understand that. Sometimes you always got to take care of yourself. You do something we love, but looking after yourself at the end of the day is also the most important thing.
Exactly, and I mean, you know, the the word retirement in wrestling. I mean, let's face it, it doesn't mean anything, does it?
No.
Um, so December's my last couple. I've got a last couple of shows in December, and then I'll take the year to heal my knee, and who knows, 2024 or whatever it'll be. Maybe then I'll pop back somewhere.
Well, the return of the Queen, that'll be quite a tagline.
Exactly. See.
What was that? So let's go to the beginning. What was your initial falling in love with wrestling?
Oh god, the my initial falling in love was I used to watch my cousins play like WWF on the PlayStation One, and that's what I thought it was. I thought it was a game for ages, and it wasn't until they used because it used to be my grand's house, and that was the only thing my cousins ever spoke to me about. Really, we never really spoke. It was the one thing we could bond on is I was allowed to watch them play video games, um, and then one day they told me that it was real, and then they had videos of it because my gran used to record it for them.
Wow.
And it was Sunday Night Heat, and it was S.A. Rios versus Gilbert was the first match that I watched. But obviously, Lita was involved in that match. She was S.A. Rios's manager, and she's who I fell in love with. And then,
Wow.
she was in the video games as well. Like afterwards, when the next ones were released. So she was kind of the reason I fell in love with wrestling because she was so cool, And then
Mhm.
through her, I fell in like I got introduced to like the Hardy Boys, and then I fell in, and then it went from there. That's when I became interested in the stories. But originally, I wasn't interested in wrestling. I was interested in Lita,
Wow.
and then it just came from that, and ever since I've not really stopped.
Yeah, no, hey, that's a hell of a story. Leah is quite one of the big draw-ins for people of all individualities coming into wrestling. Was there anyone else besides Leah?
Not for a very long time, Lita was the one really, and then obviously Jeff and Matt Hardy, and then once I started actually getting into wrestling properly and researching wrestling, Ric Flair was incredible. I thought he was such a
Mhm.
fantastic character. Goldust was such a unique character as well, and then obviously Trish, and then it was mostly women. To be fair, like I enjoyed watching older school wrestling, like Ric Flair,
Mhm.
Dusty, like, but then when I was watching it there and then, it was always the women, and I don't know if that's because I just felt more attached to women. That's me my whole life, though. Like
Mhm.
growing up in the queer as a queer kid, I was always more drawn to women, and I think
Mhm.
that's just the state of women's wrestling. I think I just found it more interesting. I thought it was to watch these women wrestle was so fascinating to me, and then
Yeah,
through the
sort of like
journey
you
of
could see
wrestling.
yourself in them as well. Like,
Yeah, exactly. I always wanted to look. I was quite feminine as a kid. I still am. So seeing women wrestle was so fascinating to me, and I always just thought like even they, and also sometimes the blessing and the curse of them having such short matches, they did more in these short times, so I always found them more exciting, and also like it didn't bore me. Like as a kid, I didn't want to watch a bloody 15, 20 minute wrestling match between Shelton Benjamin and Shawn Michaels. I mean, as an adult, when as I rewatched it, absolutely. But as a child, I was like, I don't give a fuck. I want to watch a 4 minute match between Melina and Michelle McCool. Absolutely, let's go for that. You know, I just
Nice.
thought it was more creative. Plus, a lot of the women were way more flexible, and as a kid doing like gymnastics and stuff and dance, I found that more interesting as well. And I just thought it was
Hmm.
just, I don't know, I just was more interested in that. And you know, the beauty of wrestling and growing into wrestling and becoming a wrestler, I got to meet all these women that have been like absolute dream idols of mine and become friends with some of them. So it's a wacky world, wrestling.
It is one hell of a world, I must say. You know, and you must have got some starstruck when you actually finally met them.
Oh my god, absolutely. Like, I mean, not the guys again with the same thing when I got onto the independents and stuff. Even on like a small level in the UK with the UK scene wrestlers, like the guys that were big at the time. I remember like Joseph Connors and others that I won't mention because of things that have happened.
Mm.
Um, but I remember not really knowing who they were, so I wasn't ever like starstruck or didn't really care. Not in a rude way. I'd introduce myself,
Yeah.
but like a lot of people that I was coming through the school with or training with, a lot of them would be like, "Oh, that's Joseph Connors." I went like, and they wouldn't go and talk to him, but because I had no like recollection basically of who they were, I'm like, I don't care, like whatever, hi. Or even guys on the independent scene when they were being brought over for like Defiant and stuff, like the Viking Warriors now, or
Mm.
um, a lot of the Japanese guys. Because I wasn't really watching it, I was like, "Hi, you okay?" But then cut to me meeting like Melina, and I was like,
Shit.
I love you. So yeah, it's so different to like. But then again, it's not a disrespect thing. It was never the stuff that I was interested in. So I never really watched. It never shocked me. I didn't. You know, I've been very fortunate to be work for like Southside and Defiant and everything, or WCPW at the time, who brought in some incredible people. You know, and I just
Mhm.
never. It was a blessing, really. I've never been like scared to say hello to them. Like Cody Rhodes, hi. I mean, obviously I knew who Cody Rhodes was, but like I have no like. I was like, oh, I don't care. Like he's probably never gonna remember me, so what does it matter, you know?
Uh,
Um, but yeah. So, but then again, cut to Victoria. I was like, oh my god, you did the Widow's Peak.
you must have been like, oh shit. Calm, composure, talk naturally, don't freak out.
Honestly, it's mental.
Um,
If I ever met, I mean, I've been fortunate to meet Lita. Um, I think if I met Trish, I'd freak out as well. The first time I met Lee Charles, I was very much like a child, very much like
really.
a oh my god, like please sign something, give me a hug, like oh
All the standard fanboy stuff. You're just like, oh
yeah,
shit, you calm down.
like fully marked out, fully marked. It was
He just shows that these performers leave a great impact on people.
yeah.
That's what we want. Besides, I want to talk about your training as well. You know, what was the initial training like in the UK?
Do you know what? It was I don't know, quite. It was not hard to find. It kind of fell at my feet again, kind of a little bit. Like I just finished. I'd started thinking about wrestling when I was in Liverpool the very first time when I was at drama school here. In my third year, I was trying to think of what I wanted to do, and I always like was kind of interested in wrestling, but I always thought it was more of a heteronormative male sport,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know how they'd react to someone like me wrestling. And I remember in the summer of my second year going into my third, I went to a wrestling school. But luckily, and I say this in the with the greatest respect, luckily it was closed. they
Okay.
were they'd gone on their like their summer run throughout the holiday camp. So I was obviously gutted because I worked myself up enough to like go,
Mm-hmm.
um, but luckily it was closed. And I say that because the place that I ended up training at was better, basically.
Oh,
Um, and then after my third year, I moved to Nottingham, um, and I was just lost a little bit because I didn't know what to do. I'd finished university. I wasn't doing what my course was. I was kind of in I was just stuck working in a restaurant. So I just googled wrestling schools near me, and House of Pain was I literally a 10-minute walk, and I was just like, oh god, this is like Magic, because a lot of them were like Birmingham, which obviously is, I grew up near Birmingham, so I was like, shit, I should have moved home. Or Liverpool, because All Star was here
Mm.
with Dean Allmark, or there was ones in Scotland, or there was ones in London with Progress and stuff. And I was like, shit, like that's kind of when I was in Liverpool, I couldn't really get to All Star either because I didn't have my car at the point. So when I moved to Nottingham, and I realised that House of Pain was 10 minutes away, and I didn't know the name of House of Pain at the time either. I didn't do any much research. Um, so I went to one of their shows on a Friday night, and I ended up speaking to some of the wrestlers there. And they gave me Styx's number, or his Facebook, whatever it was. And I
Mm.
messaged Styx, and he told me to come down on a Tuesday afternoon to do their beginners class. And honestly, it went from there. Like, it was mental. And then my training, normally, I was always told like training would last like a year to a year and a half before you got onto shows. And I think from the minute I walked in to debuting on a House of Pain show, it was like 5 months, 4.5. Yeah, it was quick.
Right.
But like, I mean, I came from a dance background and an acting background, so everything like it kind of came naturally to me. It was more like it was just like learning a dance routine for
Yeah.
me anyway, and then adding the character in was easy as well because obviously my theatre background.
Hmm.
It was just more getting used to the actual physicality of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was I don't know, it was a whirlwind. And to be fair, I will give myself credit as well. Like I went every single day that I could go to training. I would go to training. If there was 4 beginners classes on, I would go to every single one. And then when I got moved up, again it was the same. I would be there like 5 times a week, even if it wasn't training, like in an actual class.
Hmm.
Me and two friends that we kind of went up together. We'd go down in our free time and just work on what we'd been taught.
Oh, pure dedication for your art. It's always great to see.
Yeah.
And that's speaking of well, your dance and theatre background. We had Kid Cumry from Welsh Wrestling on, and he talked about how his bodybuilding background helped his style. Do you feel like dancing helped with your style as well?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was always. I don't know. When I first started, a lot of people would say it was too graceful. Like a lot of my movements were too graceful. I needed to be more physical or a bit more aggressive.
Hmm.
Um, but then I think like you can still see elements now. I mean, the aggression parts definitely came into it, and the wrestling side more has come into it. But some of the moves that I do, a lot of the kicks that I do, a lot of like, I don't know, just the way I move and the way I handle myself and the way I carry myself. I think you can still tell it's a very much of a dancey background.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it did influence it a lot. And I mean, remember when I first started, again, this going back to the graceful part, I remember everything was, I don't know, I think it just looked too pretty.
Okay.
I was always doing stuff on like counts and everything. So, um, but yeah, that stopped pretty quickly once like Joseph Connors and Gabriel Kidd were like, this is wrestling. Like, come on.
Put the tap and modern away. Let's go with the
Yeah, exactly.
physicality.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something important. That's representation.
Mm.
We've had Kid Bandit on from the States, and they talked about how they were transitioning as well and how that personally meant to them. Do you feel the representation within the rest of the community is a lot better than it was maybe 10, even 5 years ago?
Oh my God, absolutely. Especially in the British scene as well. Like, I said it in my promo at TNT before, calling out Effie,
Hmm.
who is incredible and I love, by the way. He's done so much in the States. I think when I first started, 8 years ago, there was no one really. I mean, there was Charlie, Morgan,
Hmm.
and Jetta, and then there was Sexsmith as well. But I mean, the theory is still out on whether that was real or not.
Mm.
Um, so there wasn't really many, like there wasn't much of a representation, especially for like a very femme queer mask presenting at the time, male presenting, I should say, at the time.
Hmm.
Um, so there wasn't really many people, but and I said it, like I said in my promo, like I said earlier. I do think, and I've been told by other like queer performers now that like I do think that I shaped the UK industry for queer representation, and then I think not just in wrestling, but I think in modern day society, a lot of especially in the last 10 years, queer culture has come a lot further, and a lot of people have
Hmm.
become more accepting of it, especially in the sense of drag race as well. Like I always say, wrestling is drag and drag is wrestling. You cannot knock the global rise of RuPaul's Drag Race, and people watching that and understanding queer culture has made people feel more comfortable to announce that they're queer.
Hmm.
And then in terms, obviously, people that were wrestling before that were closeted would come out. So we've just became way more accepting and way we fill a lot more of the space in wrestling. That's in England, in Britain, in the UK, everywhere across the world as well. So yeah, of course the representation's grown,
Hmm.
but I think that's more on the people that we're one letting into wrestling nowadays. I think we've, speaking out was incredible for not just the sexual harassment of wrestling, but the bullying of wrestling, and getting it out of the people that weren't like accepting, and the new lot of people that are in wrestling now are way more accepting of anyone. So people feel more comfortable coming out.
No, I'm glad to hear that. Everyone's happy and enjoying what we love. Speaking on RuPaul's Drag Race as well, what was it you felt like was so educational to the wider public about the community?
Well, I mean, the earlier seasons maybe not so much because it was quite problematic in the earlier like 3 or 4 seasons,
Okay.
with it just being men that were able to dress as women to present. But especially like these later couple of seasons from maybe like 6 onwards, um, we've had like women like who do drag, or we've had trans women or trans men, or we've had so much diversity in that scene, so people understand that it isn't just one set thing. Because that's the same with wrestling. You bring it back to that. For ages, we just assumed that it was a white, straight, heteronormative male that could do wrestling, and then anyone that was a POC or anyone that was different or a minority was either used on a lower platform or just wasn't used at all.
Mm.
Um, and I think just watching the growth between drag race becoming more inclusive and wrestling becoming more inclusive is just quite fascinating to me. And I don't think obviously it's not an actual connection, but I just think it's very fascinating to see what people tolerate, I suppose, or what people want to see now.
Hmm.
Because you think of it like a lot of the trans queens on Drag Race, or a lot of the POC queens on Drag Race, are actually the most popular. And I think that's the same with wrestling. A lot of the wrestlers that might be queer or POC or within a minority are more popular than you know the white hetero norm.
I hear you there, Visage. I hear you there. Speaking of another good form of representation as well, AEW having Nyla Rose being their second ever women's champion.
Yeah,
Do you feel that that was the best decision they made for good representation?
absolutely. I personally would have liked her to be the first,
Oh,
but
really?
yeah, of course, I would have loved that. I thought that would have been a very, very, an even bolder move from the company. Um, but I mean, she's still the first trans female to be a major champion on a major network. So that's still an incredible feat, really,
Hmm.
for the whole community. And that's the thing I think with the queer community, or with any community, I suppose that's a minority. One win for one person is a win for everyone, and I
Hmm.
think that's the same with Giselle. I think like look at what Giselle did with like the Progress belt, or her run with Candy at Progress, and then her stuff at TNA now, or knock whatever it's called. I can't remember.
Impact.
Impact. Um, it's been a while. Do you know what I mean?
I can
On
imagine.
Impact, and her coming out as trans, I think that's incredible. Like, because it just shows, because no one cares, and that's what's
Mm.
beautiful now about it. Like, no one, like 10, 15 years ago, if someone came out as trans after doing what they're doing, they'd probably been like tarnished. Everything would have been forgotten about, or it would have come under an umbrella of like, oh, but she's this, and this, and I hate that. But nowadays, everyone's like, work. She's a fucking cool wrestler. Great, and that's so cool to watch and see.
Ah, exactly, Visage. Just let people be themselves. There's no bad stigmatization about it. It doesn't have to put a negative connotation on it.
Yeah, and
They're
who
themselves.
cares? This is the
Exactly.
thing. It's so like, it's the same when people say, oh, intergender wrestling or women versus men. Like, what does it matter? Like, what genitalia people have, who
Mhm.
people sleep with, who people are religious to. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, can they wrestle? Can they work? Can they tell good stories? That's the important bit. It really doesn't matter what is going on in someone's, as long as it's legal, like,
No,
as long as it's like legal, it doesn't really matter what's going on in someone else's life. It doesn't, as long as they're not a fucking nonce or a
thingy.
bully, it doesn't matter who someone's like with or religious to or whatever. It doesn't care, as long as they can get in the ring, tell incredible stories, work hard, and are safe.
Hmm.
That's what matters.
That's it. We don't need the internet wrestling community poking holes in everybody's lives.
No, we really
Exactly.
don't.
Well, speaking about something that was really important to you, mentioned earlier, calling out Effie.
Yeah,
You must have been like, "Oh shit, I'm going to do this."
yeah,
What
I
was
was
the
a little
initial
bit.
thoughts for it?
So me and Effie have been speaking for literally probably like years, maybe like 3 or 4. We've been because obviously we know we kind of we recognise each other in what we've done across the
Hmm.
pond on each side and what what he's been doing with the day brunches. So obviously
Hmm.
we've known each other for a little while, and Effie wanted me to come over for big gay brunch. He asked me in like 2019, and it's funding and everything. And then I
Mm.
really wanted to go out for 2020, and then obviously we all know what went what went down in
Big
those couple
shit.
of years. So nothing could really happen. Um, and then travel's really only kind of really come about now, which ended up being like my retirement year. So then when Jay came to me from TNT, who I've worked with from the very, very beginning, and with me and Jay have been very, very close.
Hmm.
When Jay came to me with the idea of bringing GCW over, um, he obviously mentioned Effie, um, and he was like, "Would you?" And I was like, before he could even finish, I was like, "Absolutely!" Like, there is no, there's no one else that I'd want to work, especially in my last year.
Hmm.
Like there's two people. There's Effie and there's Kanji. Are the two people that I'd love to finish off my wrestling career with, as well. For now, retirement and all that. Um, so yeah, when Jay offered it, I was like, absolutely, I'd love that. If you could ever make it happen, and then obviously, what, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, it
Yeah,
finally happened.
you had that amazing GCW versus TNT cross show. Let's go a wee tad before that. We had former guest of the show, Shay Monet on.
That little bitch.
Oh no, whoa, whoa. Scottish. Actually, I got biased. Scottish got to stick with one
No,
another.
I don't
But
care. Rule breaker, kayfabe break. You know what I mean? Like kayfabe exists in the ring, but outside, Shay's amazing.
of course. But originally, you were going to have a match to determine a contendership to face Effie at TNT Crash G&G GCW. What happened there? Because I believe that match was called off, or something happened there.
It was it was just booking. Unfortunately, it was
Oh.
just like our timing. It just didn't work out in our timing. So originally we were booked for a match in March, I believe.
Mhm.
Sadly, the show got called off due to reasons that just are above our heads.
Mm.
Um, so that was fine. So we were like, right, okay, like we'll sort it out. And originally I was given the date in Cardiff, but then me and Jay agreed because of my knee wasn't getting any better at the time. I mean, it's a lot better now, but it was getting worse at the time. Like it just wasn't working out for me.
Mhm.
Um, we agreed to limit a lot of my dates. So any dates that I couldn't like that weren't really like helping the story at the
Mhm.
time weren't gonna be part of it. And this was before the March date. So this was like February when me and Jay agreed on this. So obviously we had me and Shay, sorry, booked in for March, which I still agreed to do. I
Mhm.
cancelled my Cardiff date so I could rest because obviously it's just a wrestling that hurts my knee. Like I can't really drive for long periods of time. Like I can't like extend it or bend it for too much. If it's in a certain position for too long, it starts hurting. So we
Mhm.
cancelled the Cardiff show because it just didn't. Because I think it was supposed to be like not a throwaway match, but it was just supposed to be like a here you go, it's a match.
Yeah.
Like progresses before, it'll be cool to get you in front of those eyes. Um, so it was one of those kind of matches, which I wasn't. At the end of the day, my ambitions for like progress and that lot, they're not died, but like I'm realistic that it's not going to happen. Do you know, like
Mhm.
it's not going to happen. So I'm not going to fight and show what I can do in front of people that aren't going to book me for the next 2 months. Like
No. Yeah.
it's not an ambition of mine anymore. Like if it was going to happen, it was going to happen earlier this year when I was doing the best stuff that I've ever done.
Mhm.
Um, like so my ambition, it's just realism now. Like so I was like, it's just not going to happen. I was like, I'll do the March one with Shay, and I'll do the September one with Effie.
Mhm.
And Jay was like, yeah, that's fine, cool. That's I'll find someone else to do the Cardiff show. Um, but then obviously when the March show got cancelled, um, Jay was trying to get me back for the Cardiff show, which I was agreeing on. But then I ended up getting a hospital appointment for my knee on
Mm.
the same day. Um, So I was just like, Jay, in the nicest way possible, this is more important. Like, I'd rather figure out what's going on with my knee than potentially damage it even more by driving to Cardiff and then wrestling.
Yeah.
So then it was like, okay, cool, like, but Shay's available, so I don't know what's happening there. And then we were kind of like we were throwing about the idea of the like a cinematography, like a cinematic match, like
Okay.
filming it. But then me and Shay, because Shay's obviously injured here, like she's had the same injury as me before, which
Hmm.
has been a blessing really for me in the way of like I was able to talk to him and see how like how he's dealt with it, how he rehabbed it, um, and also going into a match with Shay, knowing that he's had the injury, I knew that he'd be a safe worker for me and he would look after me.
Good.
Um, so we were kind of like we were gonna go for this like films match, but then we were kind of like, well, it just kind of doesn't seem right, like in the sense of we've built up this like, me and Shay have really like we went out above and beyond on Twitter and like promos to like really build this match up. So we were like, it kind of feels a bit of a waste just to film it, and then the adrenaline of having a crowd there kind of is what makes you not hurt as much.
Mhm.
So we were like, it just doesn't seem kind of worth it. I don't want to get injured in a wrestling ring in a training center. Even though we could like cut and like film it together, it just didn't seem right. So I pitched the idea to Jay. I was like, I'd rather it be a triple threat. I was like, one, I'm not losing anything because I get to wrestle Effie and I get to wrestle Shay, who I've never wrestled before, and I wanted to.
Mhm.
Also, like, Shay should have the opportunity. He's doing so well in Scotland and further down now, especially representing the queer community, and he'll be the next person that takes it. When I go, Shay's
Mhm.
doing it already, and Effie, his the representation from America, what he's been doing, and like it's not gonna hurt Effie wrestling two queer performers in the UK. So I was just like, let's just do it. Like, let's, who cares? Like, it doesn't hurt any of us. We're all celebrating queer wrestling, so like, let's do it. And also on a selfish level, I've not because of my knee, I hadn't wrestled in months, so a triple threat slightly easier in a
Mhm.
way that if anything happens or if I'm not feeling too comfortable, I can roll out and let the other two go for it for a little bit until I'm ready. Turns out that didn't happen. I ended up doing way more and
You
doing
put on
things
a
that I
banger. You put on a true banger.
yeah not do and doing and going for it. But when the opportunity comes on that day and you get to wrestle two people that you wanted to wrestle for ages and you don't know if it's going to be when your next match is going to be really,
Mhm.
you kind of go, oh fuck it, I'll do everything that I wanted to do because this could be the last one. Any
Yeah.
match that I have now could be the last one because my knee could go to shit. So
Awesome. Well, make it a moment, eh? Make it a moment. Go out in
exactly,
style.
exactly.
Because I remember watching that TNT X GCW show. Jay came out, Effie came out, and then boom, Rumors by Netflix hit.
There we
You
go.
come out. Holy shit! The crowd
Can
were
I
losing
just?
it.
Yeah, I will not. That the sound of that crowd and it kind of I don't know. Watching it back on the video, it's loud, but it was it just you can't compare it when you are there.
Hmm.
Like I remember being backstage because obviously I was the last one there, and all the GCW boys were watching, and the noise. I remember like Nick Wayne just being like, I was like, I know. I thought, I was trying to be cool as well. Like, yeah, like, nah,
Nah,
hometown.
you got the
it's
way, bitch. I'm coming through.
it's fine. But in the part, I was like, holy shit. And I'm quite lucky that they've got, the music, which, can I just say, my theme song, thank you, Defiant, because that is incredible. Like, for finding that for me, like, what a song. But it
Rumors
has like
is
a
a
little,
great song.
it is. And it has a little build to it. So when the noise happens, there's still like a little bit for me before I can come out, which I'm always thankful for because whenever I get that kind of reaction, I'm like, okay, right, you've got a little bit left. You've got a little bit left. Like, just take it and
Mm.
calm it down. Um, but yeah, the noise was insane. I'll never forget that.
A true highlight for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to have like what I think there's like 250, 300 people there at that time, like just to like shout towards you. That's a lot, and it all comes towards you as well. Like it's not like all around you. Like it's just
Hmm.
travels and it hits you. Like that's quite a force to be like. hit with, and then also it makes you go, yeah, I'll do some not some stupid shit, but this won't hurt as much.
I'll risk it all.
I'll risk it all. I'll take suplex on an outside on which has got glass over it from the last match, but I don't care. It's
Yeah,
fine.
fuck
It's
it.
worth
The
it.
moment.
Yeah.
Make the crowd pop.
And that's the other thing, like the Rana German, the combo. I'd done it a few times throughout the year in threat matches, but then again, I hadn't wrestled when that match happened. I hadn't wrestled for a few months, and we practiced it obviously because I was like, I've got this idea. I've not done it for a little while. Let's have a go. We practiced it 6 times. I got 3 of them right, and 3 of them went to shit.
Oof.
And I started to work myself up, and I was like, do you know what? I'll just do it. I'll just do it on the. I'll just go for it. Adrenaline. It'll either go to shit, and we'll just work from it, or it'll look sick. But then hearing that noise and getting that big rush of adrenaline, I was like, oh, this is gonna be sick. I was like, I am not. That run is happening. I don't care. It is happening. And honestly, probably one of my highlights of that match is that Rana German spot, if I'm honest.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful spot.
Sick.
Yeah, it was
And
sick.
again, guess what? That's not original. Like, I thank the women because it was Doudrop, Liv Morgan, and I think Bianca that did it on Raw, and it got forgotten about. And I went, right, I'll take that.
Make it
Thank
your
you
own.
so
Sam.
much.
Make it your own.
Exactly. See?
Like, I want to know. Obviously, you mentioned how that match was most important for the queer community as well, but how much was that show most important for TNT?
Oh yeah, I think it absolutely was important, and it was important to Jay. Like Jay afterwards was like crying and was so proud, and like, you know, he got Mark to ring announce as well. That was a moment. But it is because Jay's always been so supportive. Like Jay's always been really supportive of me. He's always been really supportive of the queer community. Like he really wants wrestling to like not just be the same, you know. Jay always wants characters. He always wants wrestling to be a story. He understands the importance of wrestling to be like a variety act. Like you can't have the same wrestling all the time, otherwise it gets boring. You know, that's why he does the death matches. That's why he does the, you know, the comedy kind of like skitty characters. He has like, you know, complete tournaments of death with women, like, which is so sick to watch because no one else is doing that. Like Jay's so open for it to be creative, and he's one of the only like promoters, you know, as well as Andy from North that I've worked with that has been absolutely 50-50. You go to an idea, he'll go for it. Like for both of them, North and TNT, they are very much open to like the creative control of the worker as well, which doesn't really happen in many other places. A lot of places will say that they are, but they're not really. Maybe what's the company? Resurgence as well, the theatre. Maybe them for like the top end performers. But yeah, like it was important for TNT. It was important for Jay as well, and I think it's more if it's important for Jay, then it's important for the business. It's important for the company. You know.
I fully understand that. That is great to hear as well. Now going back to that quick triple threat, sadly you would lose that. Shimmy would get the pin.
Yeah.
Cheeky bugger. So I guess all I can say is when are we expecting Visage versus Shay Monet?
As soon as Shay's knee's better, which is ironic, seeing as he's taken the piss out of me for the last couple of months in my knee injury. But I'm a better person, and I would never sink that low. So hopefully he gets better soon, and it'll be then. F is back over in December. I've seen it announced. So my goal is Effie at the end of the day, and if you know, and I'm sure Shay's gonna have a. I mean, I'll be honest. Shay won that triple threat, so technically he has claim, I guess. But I mean, he went by it underhandedly. I've said that a few times, and there's proof. So who knows? I mean, F is coming over in December, so hopefully Shay is all good for November, because you know, I think that's the obvious time to wrestle. If not, we'll just have to have like a rock, paper, scissors or something for it, like in the ring, because it's the only way forward.
Just a card, just a game of snaps. A game of snaps and see who wins.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have like a classic like mud wrestling chocolate pudding, whatever
Bra and
diva.
panties match.
Yeah, bra and panties, makeup table, backstage brawl or something. As long as we can get that scene where the divas were walking down the hall with the pink lights to that "Feeling Me" song, then that's all. As long as that happens, I'm happy. I
Well,
just,
that's great. I mean, all I know is when that match happens, I'm not picking a winner. You're both guests of the show. I can't.
yeah,
I'm
you
torn. I
can't,
can't
you
pick.
can't.
I,
No, I
no,
think it'll. I'm hoping it will happen in November. Fingers crossed. It's just whether Shay's okay with it and is fine. But like I said earlier, we both have the same injury. We're both
mhm,
very aware of it. So, and also with Shay, sorry, it can be more. Now we've built on that foundation, it can be more of a story match. It doesn't have
mhm,
to be like, whereas the triple threat, me and Shay kind of both wanted it to be, but more like story, but still actiony,
mhm,
and still get ourselves highlighted in the sense because Effie doesn't need highlighting really. Effie is Effie. He has a name, especially for the GCW crowd.
mhm,
Um, and Effie was very much that in the planning process. Sorry, he was like, "You guys do you. You guys show what you guys want to do. You guys show the talent that you guys have."
mhm,
Um, so now we've done that. We've built on the story through all like the promos and the Twitter beef. Like me and Shay can just go in there in November and actually have like a storied match.
mhm.
So the risk of injury doesn't have to be high. Um, and also, it would just be nice to work Shay on his own. Because it would be not like a passing of the torch, but it kind of would be in the sense of like, I've been doing this for the last 8 years on this level,
Mhm.
creating like opportunity for queer performers. And like, Shay's been doing it for, I think, around the same time. Um, so it'd be, but, he's now kicking off and going and doing incredible things, especially with ICW. So it would kind of be like a little passing of the torch of being like, I'm done, you go for it, do better than me,
Yeah.
go crazy, do what you need to do.
A very good
Especially,
story. Very
yeah,
good
especially
story.
on the network. And I mean, however that match ends as well, like, and whoever, this isn't confirmed, but whoever does go to face Effie, because I'm guessing that's where it's going to go, and if not, I'll be tamping.
Well,
Like, whoever it is will deserve it,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Well, hey,
But, yeah.
you never know, Visage. Well, hey, Visage, let's do fantasy here.
Hmm.
It's TNT, December 31st of this year. You're retiring next year, fully out of it. Never say never. And you're told you can have a wrestling match with anyone, male, female, whoever, from whatever. You're giving it.
Okay, I have two. I have one that's more realistic and one that isn't.
Okay.
So I say unrealistic. I mean, it could probably happen. It might happen. It could happen, depending on when they're retiring. Um, my more realistic one, and the one that would probably mean more to me, um, would, and I've said it before, and I've told promoters this as well, would be Kanji.
Okay.
Like, she's my best friend. Like, I was there the very first day she started training. I trained with her all the time. I was the first person to get her like I took her to every single outside booking that I had when she was first training and got her around, like introduced to people. Um, I was there for her very, very first independent show, which was a very last minute thing. Like it was for Southside. It was one of their female tournaments, and she'd met Ben a few times before. And I remember I got a phone call that morning because I was on the evening show, but we were going to go watch the afternoon women's show.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a phone call saying, "Does Winona have any gear?" And I was like, "I think so. Like, I'm sure she does. Why?" And Ben was like, "I can't remember who it was. I dropped out of the show, and I need someone to wrestle Zaya Brookside." And I was like, "Winona will do." Like, I hadn't even asked Winona. I was like, "Yeah, can she'll do it? Like, she'll do it. Like, she'll do it. Like, I know she'll. I know she's. If you ask her, she'll be like, oh, panic. If you just tell her that she's doing it, she'll go for it and she'll kill it." So I
Mm-hmm.
remember, because obviously everyone gets told, bring your gear everywhere, like you don't know what's going to happen. So as soon as Kanji got in my car, I was like, "Oh, you're wrestling today? You're wrestling Zaya Brookside?" And she was like, "What?" "Yeah, it's happening. Like, you've got an hour to like get all your nerves out and let's just go for it." Um, yeah, and then she wrestled Zaya and it like kind of went from there. And she did incredible. Um, and now she's a two-time Progress Women's Champion.
Well done for her. Well done
Yeah.
for her.
So Kanji would obviously be my natural one. I mean, I've wrestled her so like we have wrestled so many times. Like it
Hmm.
would be one of those matches that you could go. I could go in. We could meet, give a big hug, and a big squeeze because I don't get to see her very much now. Obviously living in separate cities, but
Mm.
and we could spend 5 minutes with each other and go out and just kill it because we literally do wrestle. We used to wrestle all the time. Like any days off that we used to have, we used to go down to the school and train or go through stuff or just spar and because me and Kanji both just love like just hold for hold wrestling like just go like that but we never get to do it. No one books us for that, no one
Hmm.
books Visage for that kind of style. Like Chris Ridgway always used to say when I used to train with him in Future Shock, I used to do that twice a week, once a week, whenever it was. um, but he always used to say I'd love to just book you for like a wrestling match, just like a pure wrestling match. And I was like, yeah, I'd love that too, but like no one does that. Like no one books me for that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but me and Kanji used to do that all the time on our days off. We used to just go down and just wrestle around. And it became like an ego thing to be like, who's gonna tap out? Like we all like
Oh.
who will win? Safe to say, I am the winner. Like I was the last winner anyway, and we've not done it since. So technically for me, I'm going out as a champ. And then my other one, and I was thinking about this earlier actually. I would love to wrestle Mickey James.
Oh.
I would love to wrestle Mickey James. One of my first sets of gear was inspired, like it was the flared pants. Um, yeah, I'd love to wrestle Mickey, especially on like her retirement year as well. Like
Yeah.
it'd be pretty sick. And she's over in the UK as well. She's just wrestled Lizzie. The attack with Tonga after, like I'm guessing she's coming back for that. Like so, we
Hmm.
want PW around, and if she's working for them until she finishes, I'm just saying.
Well, I better tell my boss to clip this, get this on the Instagram, share it
I
around.
know. And I'm sure, Mickey, this is straight for you. We've spoken. We know we interact on Instagram. I've been on Gore TV. Like, I'm just saying, Mickey, let's do this. The Queen of Queens versus Hardcore Country. It'd be a pretty sick match.
I mean,
I'd even wear my flares. I'd bring them out. I would bring them out of retirement. I would absolutely bring my flares out of retirement for you. But yeah, absolutely. Like, there's so much. Like I was saying to Lizzie before her match with Mickey, I was like, I can tell you, I can call Mickey's comeback from the amount of times I've watched her from growing up. I was like, it'll be these two flying elbow, like flying forearms. It might be the catcher clothesline neck drop into the flapjack kip up into the Luthez. I was like, it'll be that. It'll be some sort of that. I promise you. And then when I watched it, I was like, told you.
on the ball with the technicals. I
Yeah,
know this shit.
it was one of those fun ones. Like whenever we'd get like in back in Nottingham when we used to train, like maybe like my third or fourth year, like me, Joe Connors, Alex Gracie, Spud, Drew Parker, Gabriel Kidd, Moose occasionally when he'd be down, Saxon Huxley. We'd always train on a Wednesday night. We'd just do cardio, like we'd just blast out our training. And then the end of the class would be like we just tag in and tag out. And
Hmm.
we'd kind of structure it like a match. So we'd do like right, like someone tag in would wrestle around. Then all of a sudden, so like Joe, who'd obviously be the one that's leading the class, would be like, right, someone do a heat, and then we'd do a heat. And if it was ever my comeback, I'd always just replicate Mickey James's because it would just eat like, all right, right, cool, two clotheslines, boom, boom,
Mm.
throw one, net breaker, flapjack, boom, the kip up, right, like, so it would just be an honor to take that comeback from the absolute legend and icon that is Mickey James.
Right. Everyone at the Soul Sessions fans, everyone at Wrestling Republic, you got to share this now. Come on
Come
now.
on,
Make
Visage
this
versus
happen.
Mickey James. Come on, Vicky, that would be
Hardcore
insane.
Country versus Queen of Queens. Let's make it happen.
Absolutely, I think it'll happen. If I'm honest, even if it's, do you know what? Even if it's me and Kanji versus Nick and Mickey, I that would be a dream as well.
Well, you could
And
expect
also,
me. You
three
expect me in the crowd,
birds.
Visage. I'll be in the crowd
Yeah,
cheering you on.
three birds, one stone. It'll be incredible,
Well, hey, that's
incredible.
well, hey, Visage. I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been great talking to you.
No,
You know,
thank you for having me.
no, my pleasure. Honestly, I mean, I know maybe next year might be you've done. You may never come back, but never say never. But like they say, wrestling has more than one royal family, but there'll only ever be one Queen of Queens.
There absolutely will be, and that's a good little send off. No, thank you, honestly. Who knows? Maybe a rumble somewhere
Oh,
one day. If Effie ever brings the big gay brunch over to the UK next year, I will be there regardless. But maybe that'll be the day I'd come back if there was a big gay brunch. But no, but thank you, because I don't do this very often now, because I don't really wrestle very like as much. I don't really do many interviews, so this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
my pleasure, Visage. Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
folks, for another episode of the Soul Sessions. And remember again, check out Wrestling Republic for all your wrestling needs. Have fun, everybody, and stay lovable and have fun.